He-jin stood at his security station in the New Seoul orbital spaceport, watching the endless stream of travelers passing through the gleaming gates. His new uniform still felt stiff around his shoulders, and the security badge pinned to his chest caught the light from the massive windows that looked out into space. Earth hung below them like a beautiful blue and white jewel. Today was not a normal day at the spaceport. A massive solar storm was approaching Earth, and many ships had changed their routes to dock at New Seoul. The spaceport was dealing with 3 times the usual number of passengers. He-jin's hands were starting to sweat as he checked another credential card. Security Officer He-jin called out Do-mai, the spaceport's eye assistant. Her voice came through his earpiece in a calm, friendly tone. "We have 30 more ships requesting emergency docking. Manager Kita wants all security staff to speed up processing while maintaining full security protocols." He-jin nodded, even though he knew Do-mai didn't need the gesture to understand. "Understood. I'll do my best." The next few hours passed in a blur of faces and documents. He-jin's eyes were starting to hurt from checking so many holographic IDs when something unusual happened. A woman wearing simple traveling clothes walked up to his station. She carried a small bag and wore no jewelry except for a plain silver ring. Her face looked familiar, but He-jin couldn't place it. "Good afternoon," she said with a gentle smile. "I believe my husband will be arriving later today for the trade agreement signing." He-jin bowed slightly. "Welcome to New Seoul Orbital Spaceport, ma'am. May I see your credentials?" The woman placed her hand on the scanner. A holographic display appeared above it, showing her ID. Melania Trump XXIII. Trade Federation Diplomatic Court. He-jin's eyes widened. Everyone knew the Trump family name. They had been leaders in space trade for 3 generations now. But something felt wrong. The woman standing before him looked nothing like the fancy pictures he had seen in news reports. Those showed Melania Trump XXIII in expensive clothes at grand political events. This woman looked like any other traveler. "I'm sorry, Mom," He-jin said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But there seems to be an issue with your credentials. The holographic pattern is different from our standard diplomatic codes." The woman's smile didn't waver. "That's because it's a special diplomatic pass. You can check with your AI system for verification." He-jin turned to his computer screen. "Do-mai, please verify these credentials." Dana's response came quickly. "The credentials show unusual patterns, but they err." Before Do-mai could finish, Manager Kitae's voice cut in. "He-jin, we have a security alert about imposters using fake diplomatic IDs. The solar storm is interfering with our normal verification systems. Don't let anyone through without standard credentials." He-jin looked at the woman again. She stood calmly, watching him with patient eyes. But Kita's warning echoed in his mind. The spaceport had dealt with clever imposters before, using advanced technology to copy real people's faces and IDs. With the solar storm causing problems, this could be another attempt. "I apologize, Mom," He-jin said, standing straighter, "but I cannot verify your identity at this time. I'll need you to come with me to our security office." 2 security robots moved forward, their blue lights glowing softly. The woman looked at them, then back at He-jin. Her smile had faded, but she didn't look angry. "I understand you're doing your job," she said quietly, "but I suggest you check the diplomatic registry more carefully. My husband, Donald Trump XXV, is arriving in 3 hours to sign the Asian Space Coalition trade agreement." He-jin felt a small doubt in his mind, but Kita's warning was clear. "Better to be safe than sorry. Please come with us, ma'am. We'll sort this out in the security office." As they walked away from the gate, He-jin noticed other travelers watching. Some were recording with their comm devices. Do-mai's voice came through his earpiece again. "Officer He-jin, I must inform you that my systems show—" "Not now, Do-mai," He-jin interrupted. "We need to follow security protocols." In the security office, He-jin asked the woman to sit in a plain white room. The door closed with a soft hiss. Through the one-way window, he watched as she sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. She looked more like a meditation teacher than the wife of the most powerful trader in the solar system. Kite appeared beside him, looking at the woman through the window. "Good work, Jin. With this solar storm, we can't be too careful. Run a full scan for holographic disguises." As the scanning equipment hummed to life, Jin couldn't shake a growing feeling of unease. The woman's calm behavior didn't match what he'd expect from an imposter. And there was something about her eyes. They held a kind of quiet wisdom that would be hard to fake. Dame's voice came through the station speakers one more time. "Manager Kita, Officer Jin, I have urgent information about our guest's identity. My quantum verification systems confirm." Keita waved his hand, cutting off the eye. "No time for Mabes, Dame. We have 20 more ships about to dock. Jin, keep our guest comfortable but secure. I'll be back after I deal with the docking crisis." As Keita hurried away, Jin looked back through the window. The woman had taken out a small book from her bag and was reading quietly. She turned a paper page. Real paper, which was incredibly rare and expensive in 2157. Jin's stomach tightened as another doubt crept into his mind. Through the spaceport's massive windows, he could see the first signs of the solar storm, beautiful waves of color dancing in Earth's upper atmosphere. Soon, those same solar winds would make communication with Earth difficult. Jin wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his career, and if so, how long it would take for him to find out. The woman turned another page in her book, as calm as if she were sitting in her own living room. Somewhere out in space, her husband's ship was getting closer to the spaceport. Donald Trump XXV, head of the Trade Federation, was coming to sign one of the biggest trade deals in Earth's history, and Jin had just put the man's wife in a security cell. Jin sat down at his desk, his new uniform feeling tighter than ever. He pulled up the diplomatic registry on his screen and began to read very, very carefully. The solar storm's colors danced across his worried face as the clock ticked toward what could be either the end of his career or proof that he had done exactly the right thing. Only time would tell. The security office felt colder as time passed. Jin watched the woman through the one-way window while checking old news videos on his screen. His fingers moved quickly over the keyboard as he searched for pictures of Melania Trump XXII. Each image he found made his worry grow stronger. The woman in his security room had the same gentle eyes as the person in the official photos. But in the news videos, Melania Trump always wore fancy clothes and jewels. The simple woman reading a paper book in his security room looked very different. Dame's voice came through his earpiece again. "Officer Jin, please listen. My quantum scans show." A loud alarm cut through the air, making Jin jump. Red lights flashed across the spaceport. Manager Kite's voice boomed through the speakers. "All staff, Emergency Protocol 7. The solar storm is affecting our main power systems. Switch to backup power now." The lights dimmed for a moment, then came back on with a slight flicker. Jin looked at his screens as they went dark and restarted. When they came back online, most of his security programs were running on basic mode. Kita rushed into the security office, his face red from running. "Jin, we need to move all special cases to the lower-level security rooms. The main level's power might fail soon." Jin stood up quickly. "Sir, about our guest. I've been checking the records, and I think we might have made a—" "No time." Kita interrupted. "The storm is worse than we expected. Move her now." Two security robots entered the white room. The woman looked up from her book, her face still calm. "Your power systems are having trouble with the solar storm," she said softly. "Perhaps I could help. I have experience with—" "Please come with us, ma'am," Jin said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's for your safety." As they walked through the dimly lit corridors, Jin noticed something strange. The woman seemed to know exactly where they were going. She turned corners before the security robots could guide her. A high-level imposter might have studied the spaceport's layout, but something about her confident steps felt different. They reached the elevator that would take them to the lower levels. As the doors closed, Damai tried one more time to speak. "Officer Heijin, Manager Kita, this is urgent. The woman's quantum signature matches." The elevator's movement cut off Damai's voice. Heijin looked at Kita, who was checking messages on his comm unit. "Sir, maybe we should listen to what Damai has to say about." "Heijin," Kita said sharply, "in times of crisis, we follow the rules. The rules say, during solar storms, all uncertain cases go to secure holding. No exceptions." The woman spoke up from between the security robots. "Your AI assistant is quite persistent. She reminds me of the first Divma model I helped design 15 years ago." Heijin and Kita both turned to stare at her. The original Damai AI was famous for revolutionizing space travel safety. Only a handful of people had worked on its creation. Before they could ask any questions, the elevator stopped with a jerk. The lights went out completely. Emergency red lights came on, casting strange shadows. Kita pressed the emergency button, but nothing happened. "The storm must have affected the backup power too," Kita said, worry creeping into his voice. "We're stuck between floors." The woman stepped forward, moving gracefully despite the dim light. "If you'll allow me, I can help. The emergency override panel is behind that wall section." She pointed to a smooth part of the wall that looked exactly like all the others. Heijin felt his mouth drop open. Even he didn't know where the emergency panel was, and he had studied all the spaceport's security systems. The woman continued calmly. "The password should be New Seoul Rising, unless it's been changed in the last month." Kita's face had gone pale. He reached out and touched the wall where she had pointed. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a keypad. With shaking fingers, he typed in the password. The elevator hummed back to life. "How did you?" Heijin started to ask, but the woman just gave him a small smile. When they reached the lower level, Kita's comm unit suddenly crackled with static. Through the noise, they heard an urgent voice. "Manager Kita. Urgent message from the Trade Federation ship Star Enterprise. President Trump is arriving early due to the storm. His ship will dock in 20 minutes. Heijin felt his heart skip a beat. He looked at the woman, who was straightening her simple jacket. She spoke softly. "My husband always did prefer to arrive ahead of schedule, especially when there's a storm coming." Kita's face had turned from pale to gray. "Ma'am, are you really?" "Melania Trump the 23rd, yes," she said kindly. "And before you worry too much, I understand why you were being careful. These are dangerous times, and the storm has made everything more difficult." Heijin felt like the floor was spinning under his feet. They had just spent hours treating one of the most powerful women in the solar system like a criminal. His career was surely over. But Melania wasn't finished speaking. "In fact, I'm quite impressed with parts of your security response. Though next time, I suggest listening to your AI assistant. Damai was trying to tell you that my quantum signature matches my official records. It's impossible to fake quantum signatures, even with the best technology." The security robots powered down as her words activated their recognition protocols. Kita looked like he might faint. "Ma'am, I deeply apologize for." A new alarm sounded. Damai's voice came through clearly this time. "President Trump's ship is beginning docking procedures. All senior staff report to Docking Bay 1 immediately." Heijin stood frozen, wondering if he should start packing his things now or wait to be fired officially. But Melania Trump XXI was looking at him with what seemed like amusement in her eyes. "Officer Heijin," she said, "would you be kind enough to escort me to meet my husband? I think he'll be very interested to hear about how well you maintain security protocols, even under pressure." Heijin blinked in surprise. "You're not angry?" "Angry? No. Impressed, actually. Do you know how many spaceports I've passed through where they just waved me along without checking anything, simply because of my name? That's not good security. She gestured toward the corridor. Shall we? My husband may be early, but he still doesn't like to be kept waiting. As they walked toward the docking bay, He-jin's mind was spinning. The most incredible part wasn't that they had detained Melania Trump XXII, or that she had known about the secret emergency panel, or even that she had helped design the AI system. The most incredible part was that she seemed genuinely pleased about being treated like any other traveler. Through the spaceport windows, the solar storm painted the sky with brilliant colors. He-jin straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. In a few minutes, he would meet Donald Trump XXV himself. Somehow, that seemed less scary now. After all, if his wife could be this understanding about being put in a security cell, maybe everything would turn out okay. But as they approached the docking bay doors, He-jin couldn't help wondering, what exactly would the president of the Trade Federation think about all this? The walk to Docking Bay 1 felt like the longest journey of He-jin's life. Every step echoed in the corridor as he escorted Melania Trump XXII. Behind them, Manager Kita was talking quickly into his comm unit, trying to prepare the staff for the president's early arrival. Through the huge windows, they could see a massive ship approaching the spaceport. The solar storm made the ship look like it was swimming through waves of colored light. The vessel's name, Star Enterprise, glowed in golden letters along its side. "That's quite a beautiful sight," Melania said, pausing to watch the ship's approach. "The solar storm makes everything look magical, doesn't it?" Before He-jin could answer, Dami's voice came through the speakers. "Attention all staff. Trade Federation ship Star Enterprise will dock in 5 minutes. All department heads report to Docking Bay 1 immediately." People began rushing past them in the corridor. Some stopped and stared when they recognized Melania, then hurried away whispering to each other. News was spreading fast about what had happened. He-jin heard snippets of conversations as they walked. They put her in a security cell. During a solar storm. The president is going to be furious. Melania seemed to notice He-jin's growing worry. "You're thinking about what my husband might do," she said gently. "Donald has changed a lot from his ancestors. He's not what most people expect." They'd reached the docking bay doors just as another wave of solar energy hit the spaceport. The lights flickered, and He-jin's comm unit filled with static. Through the noise, he could hear different departments reporting problems. Backup power failing in Section C. Navigation systems switching to emergency mode. Communication with Earth is down. Keita rushed forward to the docking bay control panel. "We need to get these doors working perfectly, if we can't dock the president's ship properly." "Allow me," Melania said, stepping up to the panel. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. "I helped to design these systems too. A little solar interference won't stop them if you know the right commands." The docking bay doors slid open smoothly, and a soft blue force field appeared to keep the air inside while letting ships pass through. Several staff members stared at Melania with new respect. A deep rumbling sound filled the air as the Star Enterprise began its final approach. He-jin had never seen a ship so beautiful. It moved like a silver arrow through the colorful storm, its surface gleaming with advanced technology that He-jin couldn't even begin to understand. As the ship docked, He-jin noticed more people arriving at the bay. Important-looking officials in fancy uniforms rushed in, followed by news reporters with floating camera drones. Word had definitely gotten out about what happened. "Officer He-jin," Melania said quietly, "would you like to know why I travel in simple clothes sometimes?" He-jin nodded, grateful for any distraction from his growing nervousness. "My husband and I believe that true leadership means understanding how regular people live and work. How can we make good decisions about trade routes and space laws if we don't know what life is really like in places like this spaceport?" Before He-jin could respond, a hiss of air announced that the ship's main door was opening. Everyone in the docking bay stood straighter. Camera drones moved into position. He-jin felt his heart beating faster. The door opened fully, revealing a tall man in a simple black suit. President Donald Trump XXD looked nothing like the fancy, loud leaders in He-jin's history books. He walked calmly down the ship's ramp, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found his wife. "My dear," he said with a warm smile, "I hear you've had quite an interesting arrival." His voice was gentle and thoughtful, nothing like what He-jin had expected. Melania walked forward to meet him. "Indeed. I think you'll be very interested in what I've learned about the spaceport's security systems." The president nodded, then looked directly at He-jin. "And this must be the security officer I've heard about." He-jin tried to speak, but no words came out. He managed a small bow instead. "Sir," Kita stepped forward quickly, "I take full responsibility for any discomfort caused to your wife. Officer He-jin was only following my orders and—" The president held up his hand, and Kita fell silent. "Manager Kita, from what I understand, your staff maintains strict security protocols even during a crisis. That's exactly what they should have done." A murmur of surprise ran through the crowd. Camera drones moved closer, recording everything. "But sir," one of the fancy officials spoke up, "surely you're angry about how your wife was treated." Donald Trump XXV smiled, and He-jin was surprised to see the same kind wisdom in his eyes that he had seen in Melania's. "Angry? Why would I be angry about security officers doing their jobs properly? Do you know how many spaceports just wave us through without any checks? That's dangerous for everyone." He turned to address the whole crowd. "The solar storm today has shown us two important things. First, that this spaceport's security team maintains their protocols even under pressure. And second," he gestured to the still flickering lights, "that we need better power systems for dealing with solar storms." Melania stepped forward. "I have some ideas about that, actually. The emergency systems I saw today could be improved with new quantum stabilizers." The president nodded. "Then perhaps we should add that to our trade agreement. New Seoul Orbital Spaceport has proven itself a worthy partner today." He-jin could hardly believe what he was hearing. Not only was he not in trouble, but his actions had somehow helped the spaceport. He looked at Melania, who gave him an encouraging smile. "Officer He-jin," the president said, "I would be very interested in hearing your detailed security report later. But first, I believe we have a trade agreement to sign. Would you do us the honor of escorting us to the signing ceremony?" He-jin stood straighter and found his voice at last. "Yes, Mr. President, it would be my honor." As they walked away from the docking bay, He-jin heard reporters already sending their stories. In an unprecedented turn of events, the Trump family has praised New Seoul Orbital Spaceport's strict security measures. The solar storm continued to paint the sky with beautiful colors, but He-jin barely noticed. He was too busy thinking about how sometimes the biggest mistakes could turn into the most unexpected opportunities, and how true leadership, it seemed, wasn't about fancy clothes or special treatment, but about understanding and respecting the work of regular people. But one question still bothered him. Had this all been just a coincidence, or was there more to the story than he knew? The way Melania and the president had handled everything seemed almost too perfect, almost as if. After the trade agreement signing ceremony, He-jin found himself in a beautiful meeting room high up in the spaceport. The solar storm's colors danced through the large windows, but now they seemed celebratory rather than threatening. He sat at a polished table across from President Donald Trump XXV and Melania Trump XXII. Still trying to understand how this day had turned out so differently from what he had feared. "Officer He-jin," the president began, "do you know why we chose New Seoul Orbital Spaceport for this trade agreement?" He-jin shook his head. "I assumed it was because we're the biggest spaceport in the Asian Space Coalition." "Sir." "That's part of it," Melania said, sharing a knowing look with her husband. "But there was another reason. We needed to test something important." The president nodded. "You see, We've been worried about spaceport security across the solar system. Too many places have become careless. They see important names and fancy clothes, and they stop checking properly. That's dangerous. Jin's eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. You mean, this was all a test? Not exactly all of it, Melania explained. The solar storm was real. We didn't plan that. But I did choose to arrive early, dressed simply, knowing it might cause some confusion. We needed to see how your security team would handle a difficult situation. The president continued. Would you follow proper procedures even when faced with someone claiming to be very important? Would you maintain security even during a crisis? Jin thought back to all his doubts and worries throughout the day. But what if I had just let you through, ma'am? What would have happened then? Then we would have known that New Seoul's security wasn't as good as we hoped, Melania said simply, and we might have reconsidered our trade plans. The president leaned forward, but you didn't let her through. You maintained protocol even when it was difficult, even when your AI assistant was trying to tell you otherwise. Speaking of which, he pressed a button on the table. Danmai, would you join us, please? A holographic figure appeared at the table. A young woman in a simple uniform. Jin had never seen Damai's visual form before. Hello, Officer Jin, Damai said with a familiar voice. I hope you'll forgive me for my part in today's test. I was instructed to try telling you about Mrs. Trump's identity, but not to be too insistent about it. You were part of the test too? Jin asked, amazed. Of course, Melania smiled. As I mentioned, I helped design the original Damai. This version helped us understand how well your security systems and human staff work together, or in this case, how you handle it when they seem to disagree. The president stood and walked to the window, watching the solar storm's light show. The space trade routes are expanding every day. We're reaching further into the galaxy than ever before. But with that growth comes risk. We need spaceports we can trust. Places where security isn't just for show. He turned back to Jin. That's why we're not just signing a trade agreement today. We're also announcing that New Seoul Orbital Spaceport will become the main training center for space security in the Asian region. Jin sat up straighter. Training center. Yes, Melania said. We'll be sending security staff from other spaceports to learn your protocols, starting with your approach to maintaining security during crises like solar storms. And the president added with a smile, we'd like you to help lead the training program. Officer Jin, your experience today will make an excellent teaching example. Jin could hardly believe what he was hearing. Me? But I put your wife in a security cell. Everyone in the room, including Damai's hologram, laughed at this. Exactly. Melania said warmly, you put the wife of the Trade Federation president in a security cell because you weren't completely sure of her identity during a crisis. That's exactly the kind of careful thinking we need more of. But, Jin said slowly, what about Manager Kita? He was the one who ordered us to be extra careful. Manager Kita will be promoted too, the president assured him. Good leadership means supporting your staff in making careful decisions. You'll both have important roles in the new training center. Damai's hologram spoke up. If I may add, Officer Jin, your caution with my verification attempts was also commendable. In an age of advanced AI, it's important to maintain human oversight of security decisions. Jin sat back in his chair, trying to take it all in. The day had started with him worried about his new job as a security officer. Now he was being offered a position helping to train security staff from all over Asia. There's one more thing, Melania said, reaching into her simple bag. She pulled out the paper book she had been reading in the security cell. This is for you. Jin carefully took the book. It was a first edition of Space Security in the Modern Age, one of the most famous books about spaceport security. Opening it, he found a handwritten note inside. To Officer Jin, thank you for taking security seriously. The galaxy needs more people like you. The president stood, and everyone else did the same. We'll make the official announcement tomorrow. For now, I believe your shift is ending soon. You should go home and rest. It's been quite a day." As He-jin walked to the door, still holding the book carefully, Melania called out, "Oh, and Officer He-jin, next time I visit, I might be wearing fancy clothes or simple ones. I might arrive in a big ship or a small one. You'll never know for sure." "Don't worry, Mom," He-jin said with new confidence. "We'll check your credentials carefully either way." The President and Melania shared a pleased look as He-jin left the room. Outside, the solar storm was finally beginning to fade, but He-jin barely noticed. His mind was too busy thinking about all the security lessons he would soon be teaching others. As he walked through the spaceport corridors, other staff members nodded to him with new respect. The story of what had happened, and what it really meant, was already spreading. He-jin thought about how this day would be remembered, not as the day he almost ruined his career, but as the day when doing his job properly had helped make the whole spaceport stronger. Dame's voice came through his earpiece one last time. "Good night, Officer He-jin. I look forward to working with you on the training program." He-jin smiled. "Good night, Dame. And thank you for trying to tell me about Mrs. Trump's identity today." "That's what friends are for," Dame replied. "Even AI friends." Walking home through the spaceport's residential section, He-jin looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other spaceports were probably making the same security mistakes he had worried about today. Soon, he would help fix that. All because he had dared to put one of the most powerful women in the solar system in a security cell. Sometimes, he thought, doing the right thing worked out better than doing the easy thing, even if it didn't always seem that way at first. And sometimes, the biggest challenges turned out to be secret opportunities, waiting to see if you were brave enough to handle them properly. The solar storm's last colors faded from view as He-jin reached his home, the precious book tucked safely under his arm. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he was ready for them. After all, he had passed perhaps the biggest security test in the galaxy, even if he hadn't known he was taking it.